A lot of people do the wrong thing when they first meet their adoptive kids. Keep watching to find out how you can avoid those mistakes and make that transition of meeting your kid for the first time much more comfortable for everyone involved. Hey there and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie and I do videos about adoption, motherhood, and general lifestyle content like vlogs. So if any of that interests you, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Today's topic is about tips for the first time you meet your adopted child. This can be a very high pressure scenario for both parties. So my first tip is this: remember that this day is first about the child and second about you. For most adoptive parents, the day that you actually get to meet your kid for the first time is this incredible, like, mountaintop experience. It's something you've been looking forward to for a long time. You've planned for it, you've prepared for it, and you cannot wait. However, for the kid, this is not the case. While there may be some cases where if you're adopting an older child, they may be aware of what's happening and they might even be excited about it, that's not the typical experience. For most kids, the first time that they meet you, their adoptive parents, this is actually going to be a very traumatic experience. And a lot of people don't really like to hear that. But like I said, you as an adult have been able to plan and prepare for this, and you've looked forward to it forever. You might have information on the child already. For this kid, they usually have very little information about you, or they're too young to process it. Well, for you, you view this day as gaining a new member of your family, making your family complete or whole or whatever. For this kid, this is the day where you're going to possibly be taking them away from everything they know, and they're meeting a complete stranger. So I just want to say this: your number one goal should not be about you. Your number one goal should be about making this child feel as comfortable as possible. And I know that this adoption moment, it can be really magical to the parents, but it's just not going to be as magical to the kids in most scenarios. You need to make sure that this day is about them and that you come second, which honestly isn't all parenthood kind of like that, putting your kids first, putting you second. My second tip is make sure that you have realistic expectations for how your child is going to react when meeting you. I used to watch adoption videos all the time, and I used to watch a lot of the ones you see are with international adoption, and they're going and meeting their kid for the first time. It's this moment, and sometimes the kid just like runs up to them and hugs them. Well, that's just not the typical situation, to be perfectly honest. For example, when we first met our daughter, who is very much a social butterfly and was even at that age when she was a young toddler, she was really nervous when she met us. She was shy. She was going over to her foster mom. She was just feeling a little nervous to play with us. But that makes sense. We were strangers. And you have to realize that your expectation of if you had a biological kid and they met a stranger for the first time, you wouldn't want your kid to run up to a stranger and give them a hug, right? So you shouldn't have that expectation with the kids that you're adopting either, because the reality is right now, you are a stranger to them. Maybe you've gotten to talk to them on the phone or something. Maybe you've gotten to see maybe do like a Zoom or a Google Meet or something with them. In most cases, no. So they don't really know much about you, and they probably know a lot less about you than you know about them. So please don't go into meeting your child for the first time thinking that they're just gonna run into your arms and give you a big hug and call you mommy and daddy and be so happy to see you, because you're a stranger at that point. You'll get to that point, but it's going to take time. I think it's just really important to go in with really low expectations on the kid, because this is, like I said, can be a very traumatic time for them, and it's just something that they're not used to. This can just be a really difficult time for kids, and we can't put all these expectations on them to be happy, to be excited. They very likely will be scared, nervous, confused, especially depending on their age. It might actually be a good sign if this kid doesn't run up to you and give you a hug right away. A lot of adopted kids have attachment difficulties because they haven't had, the same caregiver throughout their entire life. They may have been in foster homes, they may have been in orphanages, And it's actually a good sign if they're clinging to their current caregiver instead of running up to you. That doesn't mean that you won't have a connection with them. It actually probably means that you have more of a likelihood. If they're clinging to their caregiver, that means they know how to form attachments, which means that will help them form an attachment with you later. And there may be cases where the kid does run up and give you a big hug, and that can be a really sweet thing. It can also be a sign, though, that they may not really be very attached to their caregiver, and they're just willing to take love from any stranger that comes their way. So please don't expect your kid to run up and hug you, and actually you can kind of be happy if they don't, because it could be a good sign. My third tip is about having realistic expectations for yourself. Just in the same way we need to have low expectations for the kids when we meet them, we can't have these incredibly high expectations for our own feelings and emotions. It is not going to be an automatic attachment with kids. Attachment and bonding takes time. Now, you may feel a spark or a little bit of love when you first meet them. You may feel like you love them right away. But loving them right away and feeling that spark is very different from being attached. And if you feel a little bit distant from that kid at first, it's okay. You just met them. You are still strangers. You might know in your heart that you're going to be their parent, you're going to be for them no matter what, but it's going to take you a little bit of time to catch up with that. You're going to need to build those memories, build that trust together, just in the same way they're going to need to build it with you. And that's okay. Do not feel bad if you do not feel an automatic connection with your child. This child is a stranger to you, and you are a stranger to this child. It takes time. Another thing about this is that you should just fully expect that the experience is going to be a little awkward. You're probably going to feel awkward, the kid's going to feel probably scared, and it's okay if you feel awkward. I remember when we met my daughter's foster mom, we actually met our daughter in her home, and I just felt odd going into someone else's home and seeing that, our daughter had been living there and had been so connected there, and I just felt like a complete stranger walking in, which I was. But I also think that that's okay to feel that awkwardness, because I think it gives you a sense of how the kid feels as well. And it might make you just slow down a little bit and give them some space before jumping in and hugging them and everything. Which brings me to my next point, which is number 4. Do not overwhelm these kids with your excitement. Like I said in my first tip, you are probably over the moon about this experience, but please remember that for this kid, this could be a very traumatizing time for them. Also, a lot of kids who are in foster care or being adopted from orphanages, they have experienced neglect, abuse at the hands of adults. And why should they trust you immediately, a stranger? So if you're going up and going to grab a kid, what if that kid has been abused before? Or what if that kid has had bad relationships with adults? They don't want a stranger running up and grabbing them. That could actually really trigger them and make them feel very scared. This is especially true if you're adopting a little kid, like a toddler. They do not understand why you are going up and grabbing them and hugging them. I highly, highly recommend do not run up and hug the kid. Wait for them to come to you. If they want to give you a hug, that's great. Obviously, you can give them a hug back, but I would not go up to them and be like, give me a hug. I just wouldn't, because that kid needs to go on their own timeline. I think you can get down at their level, can be with them, can do activities with them if they feel comfortable, but don't try to force physical affection. That can be really triggering for some kids. Your biggest goal when you meet them is to make them feel safe, not pressured. And while your excitement may be through the roof, their excitement is probably not going to be at that level. They're going to be feeling a lot more scared than they are excited. And so it's really important that you make them feel safe and show that you are a safe person that they can trust. And a big way to do this is to not invade their bubble before they're ready. Also, I think I might ruffle some feathers with this, but I really do not think that you should record yourself meeting the child for the first time. And believe me, when we were first looking into the adoption process, I fully intended on doing that. I fully intended on recording the situation so I could remember all those wonderful memories of the first time we've met them. And while I think that that would be cool to have a video of that, I think that the damage it could do and the way that it could make the child feel uncomfortable is just not worth the memories. I still remember that day very vividly, even without a video, so I think you probably can too. And I'll be honest, when we were getting ready to adopt, I was obsessed with those videos. It was very common that my husband would find me crying in front of a computer screen watching one of these videos. And I feel like they're often in international adoption that people make videos like this. And I'm not trying to shame anyone who's done it. I would just personally say that I would not do it, because I think it puts a lot of pressure on the kid. It also, usually it's like the dad recording and then the mom is up with the kid and doing stuff, and then the dad's not like bonding or meeting the kid at all, or, you know, and that's just my opinion. These kids are unsure. They don't know who you are. And if you bust into the room and you have a big camera out and you're recording them, or even if you just have your phone and you're just like, hey, like in their faces while the stranger is trying to hug them and pick them up, which is what I typically see in these videos, that is just really triggering for kids, like I said earlier. And if you have a camera in their face, even more so. I think if anything, what you can try to do is try to take one picture that night when you meet them, or that day when you meet them, but not taking a whole video. And if you want to make sure you remember it, go write it down. Write down exactly what happened in the experience. Your kid will probably really appreciate being able to read that later when they're older and see what it was like and how they reacted. But I really think having a video camera out or having like a phone out recording them just makes it a really high pressure scenario for a lot of kids. So I'm not trying to rain on your parade of being excited about meeting your kid, but I just want to say I would really be careful about that. And we had really great first meetings with both of our kids, and we did not record. We were really slow to like reach out to them. You know, we were just like, hey, you know, we asked them some questions about themselves, or we played with a toy with them, but we weren't like trying to hug them, trying to do all these things. It just really makes it better. My next two tips are very practical things. So the first one, which is tip number 5, is to bring a little bag. A lot of parents will recommend like bringing a little backpack that you could give the kid. Maybe you have like a snack in there that you think they would like, a drink, even if it's just water, having like a couple little toys or like a little activity. But please do not bring a bunch of like extravagant gifts. Going back to don't overwhelm them, my last point. A lot of these kids, if they're in foster care and orphanage, they've never had a lot of stuff, and bringing them a ton of things is actually going to be very overwhelming to them. They may be excited, but also very overwhelmed. So what I would recommend is maybe bring like a little toy that you think is appropriate for their age that they would like, that you could kind of bring out and play with them. You could even let them keep it if they're not going home with you that day or anything. That's just a way that you can kind of invite them to play with you without that pressure. So, and if they're not interested in it, don't force it. Don't expect that they're going to be grateful, that they're going to be excited. It's just a way to kind of make them feel comfortable. I think the snack and drink is kind of important too, and I'll be honest, we did not do this. I think this would have been a great thing to do with our first daughter that we adopted, who was a toddler. She was like a little over 1. I think that can be a good way for them to show them you're safe and that you provide for them. I would first make sure that the caretaker is okay with it, but just say, hey, we brought a little snack. Do you mind if we give it to them? I think it could be a good thing. I also highly recommend, and a lot of agencies will make you do this, but creating a little book that especially it's appropriate for their age, that has different people in the family, has pictures of your house, anything you can do to prepare these kids for where they're going to be moving, what family they're going to be in, is just going to help them so much. So like for our daughter who we adopted when she came into our house when she was like 1.5, we had a little book made. It was just like laminated and bound together, and it had like, this is the mom in the house, this is the dad in the house, this is the puppy in the house, and like then it had like pictures of the house and pictures of grandparents, just so that they can kind of start to understand faces and names, and just to start to feel comfortable. That would be an awesome thing you could leave with them. That's what we did, and it really helped. And our daughter Brielle, her foster mom, said she would read that book all the time. She'd always get it down off the table. So I think it really did help her realize who we were and that we were going to be important people in her life. And my last tip, which is another one of my practical ones, is while you are with the caretaker, it's very possible the caretaker for this child, whether it's a foster parent or an orphanage worker, whatever, will be there when you meet the child. Take this time, if there's not a language barrier, take the time to ask this person questions. we got so much more helpful information from our kids' foster moms than we did from the social workers. And it's not that the social workers weren't helpful, they were. But the caseworkers just have a limit on like kind of what they can share, what they will share, or even what they know. But oftentimes, especially if you're adopting from foster care, the foster parents are going to know some more stuff. So we got information about family history, more stuff about their birth moms, different things. I don't know, just got a lot of really good info. And also ask questions about bedtime rituals. What are the things they like to have when they go to bed? Our daughter is very picky about her bedtime ritual, and we learned about that from her foster mom. Ask about some of the kids' favorite foods. Could you try to incorporate some of the kids' favorite foods within the first couple weeks or months that they're living there so that they feel more comfortable? While it is possible that the caretakers or the foster family may not be the best resources, it's always good to check, because sometimes you only really have those moments to ask them. Now, in our case, we've kept in touch with both of our kids' foster moms, so we're still able to ask them questions now, and I really recommend, if the foster parent's comfortable with that, do it. Obviously, in international adoption, that is much different and very difficult. So like I said, if you can ask, definitely do. Get any information you can up front with the people who have actually spent time with this kid. So there you have it. There are some tips that I hope really help you the first time you meet your adoptive kids. Now, I have only gone through this experience 2 times, but both times went extremely well the first time we met our kids. And I think a big reason is because we followed some of these tips. We did not have a camera out in their faces. We were very careful not to invade their space until they were ready. And it happened very naturally in those first, couple of meetings with them. So I really recommend you follow these tips, and I hope they help you. Also, I don't think I mentioned this enough, but while I am so glad you're using my channel to get information about adoption, and I love sharing with you, just remember to also talk to your social workers. They're also full of great tips, way more experience than I have, and they'll be happy to help you. I know it's been a long time since I have done a sit-down video like this, and I think that a lot of you really enjoy these. So please go ahead, and if you have any ideas for specific informational videos like this that you would like me to record, drop them in the comments and I will put it on my list so I can start recording some more of these for all of you. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.